Welcome, dear listeners, to the Carolina Haints podcast, brought to you by Wreak Havoc Productions and A Darker World. I'm your host, Dan Sellers. In 1878, Joel Korner was 26 years old and decided to build a house at 413 South Main Street in his hometown of Kornersville, North Carolina. It was going to be his home, his office, his art studio, and a way to display his interior design work. Completed in 1880, the house was immediately ridiculed by the locals because its odd structure and floor plan drastically increased the construction costs. Neighbors began calling the house Korner's Folly. Joel liked the name and put the name on a sign in the front yard soon after. Korner's Folly has been called America's strangest house. With a moniker like that, it's pretty easy to imagine that comparisons have been made between Korner's Folly and the famous Winchester House in San Jose, California. But they're very different. Sarah Winchester had been driven mad by the guilt of her family's arms business. She believed that the dead would eventually come to extract revenge from her, and she built her house haphazard to prevent them from finding her. Stairs that go nowhere, doors that open to walls, rooms within rooms, etc. Korner's Folly was built intentionally and deliberately. There are no two rooms inside Korner's Folly that are identical, and today people are amazed at Joel's insight and ingenuity. The house stands 3 stories tall, but there are 7 different levels inside the home, ranging from the cellar to the attic. The home has 15 fireplaces, but Joel was terrified of fire, and none of them have ever been lit. He only permitted smoking in a room lined with tile and built to be fireproof. The ceilings vary from less than 6 feet to a soaring 25 feet. Joel Korner built his home to be a visual experience. Some windows extend upward to rooms on the floor above, neither of them opening. Cubby holes and trapdoors exemplify Victorian architecture, although Joel often rebelled against Victorian attitudes. When he renovated the part of the house to host parties, he built kissing corners as an affront to the Victorian authoritarian views of the day. The corners were small closets, just big enough for 2 people. Joel also designed a unique heating and air conditioning system using tunnels built under the floors. Square pieces of wood embedded into the walls and floors, and special pivoting windows, could be positioned to allow airflow through the house. A revolving window covers a huge hole that lets air circulate from the stairway 10 feet below. In addition to making the house his home, Joel also ran his furniture interior design business from the house. Joel Korner was a savvy businessman. He made his living in advertising and interior design, but would entrepreneur many various business opportunities. Some years before building Korner's Folly, he was commissioned by the Blackwell Tobacco Company to create a series of ads. Joel, under the pseudonym of Reuben Rink, created the America's first national advertising campaign with the Bull Durham bull. The original Bull Durham was an anatomically correct bull, and soon after the campaign began, recognizing the strategic value of controversy, Joel wrote to a local newspaper pretending to be a woman who was offended by the pictures. Then he wrote his own response to the letter, saying with the genitals, "You'd think it was merely a cow." Utilizing his design skills, Korner designed many of the pieces of furniture through the house. When the pieces were too large to fit through the doors or up the narrow staircases, he had them built into the room. where they would reside. In 1886, Joel Korner married Polly Alice Maston, the daughter of Forsyth County Sheriff Matthias Maston. After their marriage, Joel made several changes around the house to transform it from a bachelor pad to a family home. One of these changes included converting the attic into Cupid's Park, considered to be America's first community theater. Alice Korner, as she preferred to be called, was a talented seamstress and spent much of her time with local embroidery and women's groups. She served as president of the Needlework Guide of America in 1910. The Korners also operated Kernersville's first public library from the home. Together they had 2 children and a Bob. Joel Gilmer Korner Jr. was born in 1887, and Allie Dora Korner in 1889. And Bob, as unusual as Korner's Folly is and was, it seemed only fitting that the Korner children had a unique pet as well. Bob was their pet raccoon. Alice Korner founded the Juvenile Lyceum, or Children's Lyceum, where children ages 7 to 13 were invited to create, rehearse, and perform at Korner's Folly. Over 40 children attended the first meeting on April 3, 1896, prompting Joel to turn his billiard room on the top floor into Cupid's Park Theater. To musically support their plays, Alice Korner started the town's first orchestra to play in the theater. The theater gets its name from 8 Cupid-themed murals painted by famous German artist, close family friend, Caesar Milch. The Korners assisted the children in producing these performances, and the entire community was invited to attend. Today, Cupid's Park Theater is still used by local performing arts groups. She also started the town's first orchestra, which performed in the theater. The most popular room in the house may be the ballroom on the second floor. During intermissions, patrons of the theater mingle here and enjoy some refreshments. On Easter Day, 1880, Joel opened the house and invited all the family and friends and neighbors to Korner's Folly. But he never considered the building to be truly complete. He was constantly modifying and changing things around the house, and when he died, he had a blueprint of more renovations to come, laying on the drawing table. Joel died in the house on Thanksgiving Day, 1924. He was survived by his wife and 2 children. Polly Alice Korner died in 1934. After her death, Korner's Folly fell into a state of disrepair. Several attempts were made to revive the structure. It was a funeral parlor for a while, and was also an antique store. During this time, it was claimed that the furniture would sometimes be moved overnight. The house was then leased as a rental property for a while, until one resident damaged parts of the interior. There was then talks of turning the home into a restaurant. Local residents decided that enough was enough. Nearly 30 families, many of them relatives of the Korners, joined together to purchase the property and register it with the National Registry of Historic Places. Eventually, their efforts led to the Korner's Folly Foundation, a nonprofit organization established as an ongoing attempt to restore and maintain the unique home. The ghosts of Korner's Folly do not seem to be haunting it. They live there, content with the memories of the past and happy to entertain guests. While volunteers rarely experience anything unusual, many visitors have often reported that they feel like they are being watched. One Kernersville resident shared how his grandmother was a housekeeper at the home. She relayed to him that she heard distinct footsteps descending the staircase, even though no one else was there inside. One community theater group that uses Cupid's Park for rehearsals have reported the lights mysteriously turning on by themselves. A repairman was working on the air conditioning unit in the theater when he felt someone tap him 3 times, lightly on his hat. When he turned to see who was there, he found that he was alone. The man immediately left the building and refused to ever come back. He even abandoned his tools on the way. More than one passerby has claimed to see a little girl standing on the porch in the evening hours. Tour guides have smelled the persistent odor of cigar smoke through the building when, of course, smoking is strictly forbidden in the house. Although this podcast is not about ghost hunting, it's hard to ignore that aspect of it when talking about Korner's Folly. This foundation readily embraces the ghost hunting community, and the building is open to paranormal investigations. All they ask is that the investigators make a donation toward the renovation efforts. While some paranormal investigations can be about obtaining evidence of the afterlife or debunking bogus or mistaken claims, some investigations can be about creating a mystique. Ghosts can be big business. The Korner's Folly Foundation has recognized that the media hype around paranormal investigations can introduce the property to a larger audience and endear it to its current patrons. Free advertising, in other words. The North Carolina chapter of the well-known TAPS organization was the first paranormal team to investigate the house. Bruce Frankel had recently become the new director of Korner's Folly Foundation. Frankel had no idea if the house was haunted or not, and frankly, he didn't care. However, being a business owner himself, he identified an opportunity for the location to acquire both additional renovations funds and receive some much-needed publicity. Together with the ghost hunters, they coordinated several newspaper and television interviews, playing to their strengths. On one hand, the TAPS name carried a lot of recognition through the popular Ghost Hunters television program, and on the other hand, Korner's Folly is a site rich with historical history. The TAPS team investigated the house, and at first it did not find very much extraordinary about the location. A rustling noise was heard in the kitchen, a couple of unexplained knocks from the same area, EMF fluctuations, and a small flash of light that seemingly appeared out of nowhere. But then the activity started to pick up. At least one investigator claimed to be pushed by an unseen force, and another witnessed the apparition of a woman. The audio and videotapes were reviewed, and about the same time that the small flash of light was seen, a little girl's voice could be heard saying, "Peekaboo." Later, another investigator switched on her recording and announced, "Starting EVP session." A man's voice was caught on tape asking, "What is EVP?" The investigator who saw the woman's apparition asked, "What's your name?" And a response is heard, "Annie." To learn more about the hauntings at Korner's Folly, check out the book by Amy Speece and Michael Renneker, Ghost of the Triad, Tales from the Haunted Heart of the Piedmont, and Deona Syed's Paranormal Obsession, America's Fascination with Ghosts and Hauntings, Spooks and Spirits. You can also check out ghostvillage.com, greensboro.com, and kornersfolly.org. This episode was researched and written by Jeff Cochran and is narrated and produced by me, Dan Sellers. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to check out all our other projects. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Recap Productions, and I'm on Twitter at Hank vs. the Undead. You can find every episode of our show and everything else we're up to at our website, recapitproductions.com. Don't forget to check out adarkerworld.com for updates on Jeff Cochran's work, and feel free to email us your suggestions and queries at recapitproductions@gmail.com. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Every single review helps the show become more available to other listeners, and I would sincerely appreciate it. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Tune in then. to hear more about the things that go bump in the night.